Oh, you are.
Good evening, everyone. I call to order the March 6, 2024 public hearing and regular meeting of the Administration of Committee, Administration, Finance, and Law. The time is now 6:35 p.m. Ms. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Alderman Connors.
Here.
Alderman Barbosa. Alderman McNamara.
Here.
Alderman Simpson.
Present.
Alderman Gibson. Alderman Smedley. Alderman Sabitra.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum. Also seated this evening, you have Alderman Russell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we will have a, Ms. Clerk, will you please read into the record of the notice of public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to waive the reading.
Second.
Motion to waive the reading made by Alderman Simpson, seconded by Alderman Cervedra. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The reading is waived. Having been noticed properly, we will begin the public hearing. Please remember to state your name and address for the record and limit your speaking to 3 minutes. The first item for public hearing is item number 36362-1, resolution of compensation for elected and appointed officials. Are there any speakers for this item? Are there any speakers for this item? Are there any speakers for this item? Seeing no speakers, we will move on to the next item. The second item for public hearing is item number 36364, amendment to section 2-41 of the Code of Ordinances regarding council subject matter committees. Are there any speakers for this item? Are there any speakers for this item? Are there any speakers for this item? Seeing no speakers, we will move on to the next item. Pardon me. The third item for public hearing is item number 36365, amendment to Chapter 2, Section 2338 of the Code of Ordinances regarding compensation of elected and appointed officials. Are there any speakers for this item? Are there any speakers for this item? Are there any speakers for this item? Seeing no speakers, we will close public participation and move on to the regular meeting. The time is now 6:38 PM. The first item on the agenda is item number 36362, report of compensation for elected and appointed officials. May I have a motion?
No, but can I make a motion to move item number 2 to the top?
Second. Seconded by Alderman Cervedra.
To move the tabled item to item number 2 on the agenda.
To move the tabled item to item number 2 on the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman, could we just take maybe a pause as we
Sure.
wait for the staff person to come back with the information?
Brief recess.
Well, because isn't the report 1 and then the resolution's 2, but it's the exact same thing. One's the report and the other's the resolution on the report,
Right,
but there are 2 separate numbers on the agenda.
so we should
Do 1 and 2.
one within table 2.
Jessica.
Yeah.
So 1 is the report, but 2 is the actual resolution,
Yeah,
it's the
so
same
what you're just
thing?
accepting,
So
you just, and then, because that just is the report on what the committee did, 2 is really where you.
the
put
action
the
item,
action.
so you still want the tabled item to come before the action item?
Whichever you want to
Okay.
do it. It was just to give her time
Time
to
to-
do
okay.
whatever. So however, you can just accept the report.
Okay.
And the discussion could be on the resolution or talk
Okay.
about whichever you want.
right.
Or
That always throws me off that we have to have report anyways.
Right, so we'll proceed on number 1.
Thank you, Linda, sorry about that. I make a motion to come back from recess.
Is there a second? Second. Second by Alderman Gibbs.
Excuse me,
Mr.
Sorry?
Can you turn your microphone on, please?
Apologies.
You might as well just leave yours on, Neil.
Right. So to rewind, we have item number 36362, report of compensation for elected appointed officials, moved to accept by Alderman Cervedra, seconded by Alderman Gibson. Apologies for not having my mic on. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, we'll be able to discuss it at the resolution.
Got it.
All right, so I'm just asking, like, as long, so we can hold any questions for the resolution portion? Is
That's
you wanna
fine.
do that?
Sure.
Is this, a point of order, is this not a separate resolution? Or,
The report and the resolution tackle the same subject matter. The report, we're just accepting. The resolution we actually vote on as an action.
so any amendment can be made in the second half?
Correct, on the resolution.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. So, again, the first item on the agenda is reported compensation for elected and appointed officials. May I have a motion?
No, we did that.
We did that, for the motion to accept and refer with a neutral recommendation,
Yes.
made by Alderman Cervedra, seconded by Alderman Gibson. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. The second item on the agenda is item number 36362-1, resolution of compensation for elected and appointed officials. May I have a motion?
I move that we accept it with a neutral recommendation and report it back to the council.
Second.
We moved, are we not, we moved the tabled item?
Well, I thought we would just take these two because they're the same together, and then we could do the tabled item next.
Okay.
But the motion was to take the tabled item and make it number 2.
It was, we just didn't realize that 1 and 2 were the same thing. But that's okay, whatever order you want to take it in.
Well, I think just since you made a motion to make the tabled item number 2, we should probably take that matter up.
All right, Neil.
Got it. So, we're addressing the second item on the agenda, correct? 3636, tabled item. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept item number 2, being item number 36310-1.
You have to take it off the table.
Oh, thank you. Make a motion to take this item off of the table and bring it back to this body here.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, now I rise to make a motion to accept and refer to the Common Council with a neutral recommendation, item number 36310-1.
There's already a neutral recommendation on the floor.
Okay.
It's just removing it from the table. So you can just have discussion with the neutral recommendation that already exists from when you tabled it.
Okay, thank you, then that's all.
So I have a question.
Sure. Alderman Cervedra.
Okay, so I wasn't exactly sure, because this was a response to a petition that got referred here, and I wasn't sure the purpose of its referral. So it came here, it got tabled, now we're taking it off the table and just sending it back to the council. So if anybody on this committee was part of the group that wanted it sent here, could you answer me the question, why? Why was it sent here?
Well, it was originally, it was tabled because the original person that put in the petition was not present. And we didn't understand what it was for, but I do have a couple questions if I can ask Ms. Linda.
Alderman Barbosa, through you.
To Linda.
Oh, apology.
This petition came up because there was an individual who was trying to open a business and came to the town hall trying to get services so that she can open up her business. But she came 8 different times, and each time she came, she was moved around to different departments because they didn't have a Spanish speaker that can assist her. The last thing that they told her was, in order for her to receive assistance, she'd have to come back with someone who spoke both Spanish and English. She finally got what she received, but I'm looking at this chart, and the number of Spanish speakers in the offices that are mainly used by the citizens, how do you manage to provide services to these individuals who don't speak Spanish and probably Polish as well.
Which department were you asking
Like
about?
in the town clerk's office, there's one, in finance, there's one, in the assessor's office, there's two, in the tax department, there's three. And if this person got shuffled around 8 different times, what's the protocol in assisting someone who doesn't speak the English language?
So in my department, in Human Resources, if somebody comes and requires services that doesn't speak English, let's say they speak Spanish, I have a list of Spanish-speaking employees that I call, and they come right up. They may have to wait like 2 or 3 minutes, but they do come. We do have a list. So I would be interested to know who that person was and who they went to. What department?
I know they own their business is now open. It's on East Street. It's a nail salon. I don't know who the person is, but I can get I can go to her and ask her who she ended up speaking with and get back to you.
Okay, because that's very unusual.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure that there was someone that was going to be able to help these individuals when they come in and not be turned away just because they don't speak the language or be delayed services.
Right, I think this is the first time I've ever heard of someone that was turned away.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bosa. Alderman Simpson.
Okay, so Linda, I remember talking to you when I was on the council 4 years ago, and we talked about in job descriptions, when we're trying to hire people, why can we not require people to be bilingual when we're putting a job description together?
Well, I did bring down a job description on something that I'm posting tomorrow in the Community Services Department as a prevention coordinator, because we are losing our prevention coordinator at the end of March. And in the preferred, what we ask is ability to speak basic English is required, and the ability to speak Spanish, Polish, or additional languages is preferable. So we always prefer bilingual candidates.
And when you're interviewing candidates, and we say preferred, do you give a candidate, so all things being equal, but I'm monolingual and someone else is bilingual, then they'll get the job, all things else being equal?
If everything else is equal, yes.
Okay. All right, that's good to know.
I have a question. When those individuals apply and they put on the application that, yes, they do speak Spanish, are they tested so that they can speak the language fluently
We
and
do.
understandably?
The only department that tests is the PD.
Is the
language-
police department?
Is the police department for languages. We
So
do not
someone can put on
test.
the application that they're dual language and there's no way to confirm if they really are dual language?
No. I mean, we can start to do that.
I think it would, my suggestion would be to find someone else in the department who's very fluent in either language, whichever language you're looking for, and have that person just have a dialogue to see if they do understand and have them report back to you. I know in my position, that's what we do. When someone says they speak the language, we have someone who speaks it, sit with them and have a dialogue to see if they can understand and speak back, because the last thing you want is for someone to provide the wrong information because
Right.
they don't speak or understand the language.
Thank you, Alderman Laversa. Alderman Simpson.
Thank you. So when you say the police department is the only department which tests for multilingual or bilingual skills, how do we ensure that our educators who are language teachers can actually speak the language they're responsible for teaching? Or is this not? That's a Board of Ed question. It's a Board of Ed question?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to clarify because that seems a little off. I hear that, but I just want to make sure that, if our teachers are responsible for teaching languages, that if they're certified, great, but we need to actually ensure that they can teach the language, and papers don't always add up sometimes, so I just want to, demonstrate the skills before hiring somebody. So hearing that the police department is the only one that does testing just raised a little flag for me, but if that's a Board of Ed question, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question. Any further discussion and questions?
Just leave it on, Neil.
Sure. No one wants to hear from me, generally speaking. Any further discussion or questions by anyone? Alderman Russell, anything?
I'm glad you came.
Are you sure? All right. You've got good input. All right. One more time, any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion is to refer with the neutral recommendation, I believe. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. The third item on the agenda is item number 36364, amendment to number 2-41 of the Code of Ordinances regarding council subject matter committees. May I have a motion?
Wait.
Sure.
I wanna say something.
You skipped
We
one.
gotta go back to what's listed as number 2, the resolution of compensation for elected and appointed officials.
Did we,
Remember, we moved the table item there instead? So we're going back to this one.
okie dokie. So the item on the agenda is 36362-1, resolution of compensation for elected and appointed officials. May I have a motion?
I move with a neutral recommendation back to the council.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman McNamara.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Sure. Alderwoman Servidra?
Thanks. So the way the resolution's worded, it's that each registrar's salary would go up by $5,000. What the resolution fails to do is list what the existing salary is and what it's going to. So if we're bumping the salaries up to $5,000, what are the salaries currently?
For the Register of Voters?
Yes.
So Resolution 35739-3 increased their salaries to $65,000 annually.
That was in 2022?
That was in November 8th, 2022. And that,
Can you turn the mic on, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
and then the resolution also stated that, right here, that they would be, they would receive increases equal to the 1186 contract annually. So in November 8th, 2022, their salaries did go to $65,000. But in November 8th, 2023, I did look, they didn't put in their 2.25% increase.
Okay. Can you go, so is it a salary, you get a salary increase or the 1186 increase, or you get them both?
Well, they got the 96,000 in 2022, that was the increase.
That's Mark who got the 96, they got the 65.
Oh, I'm sorry, the 65, yes. So it's every year they would get the increase that 1186 received.
Okay. So the compensation, if every year the registrars and any other elected officials that are tied to 1186, is it one or the other? You get the 1186 increase, or the compensation committee gives you a lump sum, or you get both?
As I
Can
read
I
it, it would
answer?
be 1186.
Can I answer that question?
Sure.
It's if they do not, according to the ordinance, which is section 2-338, if they do not receive a increase through the compensation committee process, then they can have the 1186 increase.
Okay. And that, I know we're here specifically, Mary, for the registrars, but that's the same for any elected official, correct?
Well, there's different sections, yes, but 2-338, subsection 7 is specifically for the registrars.
Which is what's before us now.
Yep.
Linda, can you go back, not the 2022, but then the increase that was before 2022?
I have to go back and look at
Oh,
that.
you only did the 20,
Yeah.
because when I was on the council, we also gave an increase.
Okay.
So what I wanted to show is the compensation committee, this would be the third time it met, and the third time it's recommending an increase in the salary of the registrars.
Well, I can get that for you for tomorrow.
Well, I don't need it to vote on it tonight, but I would
Okay.
like to have it when it gets to the council meeting. And I'm not opposed to it, I'm just trying to show that the compensation committee has consistently recommended increases, not only for this position, but for the other elected positions as well. Well, except for the council. 2022 was the first time the council's salary went up in years. And is that too now linked to 1186?
It would be linked to the same as,
That's on the agenda
1186,
tonight, but the
yeah.
proposal is to have, is that the question, the council members, Alderwoman?
Yes, I'm sorry,
So the
Mary.
council members, the proposal is to add the council members and the treasurer and the clerk of committees to subsection 6 of 2-338, so that, again, they would be tied to an 1186 increase if there was no salary modification through the compensation committee process.
Okay. Thank you very much, both of you. I have no further questions, Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alderwoman Serveja. I have my microphone on. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, on this resolution, going down to the fifth whereas, these increases will go into effect November 10th, 2025. The ones you were just talking about, with the exception of the registrar of voters, whose increases will take effect January 8th, 2025. I'd like to offer an amendment to that for an effective date to July 1, 2024. And I'd ask our good corp counsel to comment if she wishes.
Well, my first comment is that that first sentence is probably not required, right? That these increases will go into effect on November 10th, 2025, with the exception of registrars. The registrars are the only ones being
Correct.
increased, correct? So I would think that would have to come out.
Yep.
And then, I'm sorry, Alderman, what was your question? You want
Well-
to change the effective date?
Effective date to the start of the next fiscal year.
Okay, so I'm just going to state that section 2-338, subsection, let me see here, I think 5 states that the effective date of any adjustments to compensation of elected officials through the compensation committee, and it states when those adjustments should take place, and it says for registrar of voters, it should be on the first day of the commencement of the term of office. And I think that's why the January 8th, 2025 date was selected. But if you want to change that to July, I mean, typically, we would follow the ordinance section, but
Yeah, I appreciate that. I recognize that there's common sense in the beginning of the start of a new term. However, I understand there was a salary modification for a current elected official whose job will be an appointed official in 2025. I understand that occurred, so the registrars have made the case of this year. They have responsibilities of early voting, and hopefully they can do the effective job of registering more voters as we head the presidential year. So I offer that as an amendment for this, to make an exception to what Attorney Prikorsky states is in the ordinance.
and then are you looking for language for the amendment, Alderman?
Well, sure. I mean, the only language I have is the date, the effective date.
Right, so you would just amend that fifth whereas to say
Yeah.
this increase, correct?
Correct, to,
This increase will take effect July 1, 2024, is that what you'd like it to say?
that's my intent, Mary, yeah.
Okay, so you can make that motion?
I do make that motion,
Did everyone get it?
an amendment.
Motion to amend the floor. Any second? Any second?
I have a question. Can you explain can you explain this just a little further as to why the July 1st, John?
Correct, well, I want to, in terms of being elected officials, we have an elected official now who's gotten a salary modification. whose office will become an appointed one next year.
And they've already gotten the modification before
That's
they
my
were
understanding.
appointed?
That's my understanding.
I'm going
Thank
to
you,
jump in on
Alderman
that one. I'm going to jump in on that one because I
Alderman
think,
Saavedra?
John, you're being a little vague. Did they get a salary modification through the compensation committee in 2022, or are you suggesting that post-2022, there was an additional salary modification for that position?
I believe so. It's in the budget, yes.
Well, it's in our current budget, or it's in a proposed budget? Because I know nothing about a salary adjustment that was made outside of the scope of the compensation committee.
Well, I do not know if it came up at the compensation committee. Maybe Ms. Guard can shed light on that, but we're talking about the town clerk, Ms. Guard.
Thank you, Alderman McNamara. Alderman Simpson?
I just need somebody to turn their mic off.
I'll turn mine off.
So, so this resolution names the registrar of voters as the relevant elected official receiving this pay increase. Frankly, if we're discussing the town clerk, which is an appointed position as of 2025, I don't see how the town clerk is really relevant to this resolution. If somebody can break that down for me, I'd greatly appreciate that. And just as a reminder, there isn't a second for this motion.
Thank you, Alderman Simpson. Any further
Mr.
discussion?
Chairman, if we have a second, I'll withdraw the motion and return to the original language of January 8th, 2025.
The motion,
But I
The
have a
amend-
question. I haven't seconded yet because I still need explanation, more clarification, whether it's the registrar or it's this individual. If a person is not in a position right now, they should not be having an increase in pay, regardless, because they haven't started the job. So if that person has gotten an increase, then everyone else should be moved up, because it's not fair. It's not fair to reward someone to reward someone for a job they're not yet doing.
Okay, this is where it's getting muddy.
thank you, Alderman
Getting
Barbosa.
muddy.
One at a time, so Alderman
I
Saavedra?
want to clarify this because. Yeah, I'm turning it on. I'm going to clarify this because I don't like the way this is going at all, because John's making an innuendo without being able to produce evidence of the innuendo. Compensation, Mark Bernacki is an elected town clerk. He gets compensated just like the registrars, just like we do through the compensation committee. He is in the job and is getting paid for the job that he's doing. John is suggesting that he's being overpaid for the job because he's an elected, not a hired employee. That's neither here nor there. The town and city clerk's salary, as I know it to be true, came out of the compensation committee, and it is what the council voted on to give him. There is no illegal action here. He is doing the job. It's not someone doing a job before he gets hired. He's going to not be elected come 2025, and he's going to have to reapply if he wants for the job that's going out to the public to become a civil service job. So this discussion muddied the waters, and I'm not going to have Mark Bernacki's name tainted as part of this discussion. We are here about the registrar of voters and whether or not we believe that they should get a raise for their job. If there's a complaint about how Mark Bernacki in the town and city clerk's office got a raise, that is a separate issue that we should take on the side. But the innuendo is false unless evidence is presented.
Thank you, Alderman Saavedra.
Thank you, Alderman. Again,
McNamara.
Mr. Chairman, with the doubts cast by members of the committee, I'll withdraw the motion and revert back to the original language of January 8th, 2025, which is the beginning of the term of they do remain elected registrar of voters, not appointed.
Thank you, Alderman McNamara. So, to my knowledge, we are back to a motion on 36362-1. Any further discussion on 36362-1 as written?
Can I just make a point of order?
Yes?
Just with respect to that fifth whereas clause, you still have that first portion that's incorrect. That says these increases will go into effect November 10th, 2025, with the exception of, I think that just needs to be corrected, because the only raise that's being given here is the registrar of voters, so it just at least should say this increase will go into effect January 8th, 2025, or will take effect January 2025.
Thank you.
Friendly amendment, or do we have to make it official?
I'll make that as a friendly amendment,
Thank you.
because
Alderman.
it does reference the clerk, the common council. Mary?
The clerk and the common council are through the ordinance revision. That is coming up next on, or I think at some point on this agenda. So that's a separate
Okay.
item, right? Am I,
Yeah, that's second.
okay.
Well,
I thought this was it, okay.
I mean, they do reference that they recommend that the council adopt changes to section 2-336, but there is a separate resolution that makes those changes.
Well, I move the omission of what the Corp Council suggested to amend it, drop that language.
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye. This gets rid of
All right, motion carries. All right, so, any further discussion on the agenda item as amended? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Item carries. Thank you, everyone, very much for that very collaborative discussion. The third item on the agenda is item number 36364, amendment to section 2-41 of Code of Ordinances regarding council subject matter committees. May I have a motion?
I move with a neutral recommendation.
I have a motion for a neutral recommendation, seconded by Alderman McNamara. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Alderwoman Saavedra first?
The only person whose name is on here that's here, part of the committee, is Alderperson McNamara, so I guess I'm going to... Thank you. So the only person whose name is on the resolution that's also on this committee is Alderman McNamara. So I guess my question would be to him to kind of explain the purpose of this resolution. I'd kind of like to understand exactly what we're doing here.
Sure, thank you, Alderwoman Saavedra. This is an effort to give the council flexibility in terms of how it organizes its committees or changes them and so forth. And it just amends the ordinance as the language reflects to give the council the ability to have flexibility in how it handles subject matter committees. And I believe, I don't know, I believe the Corp Council did weigh in on this with an opinion.
Unless Corp Counsel is jumping in now, I'd like to follow up on that.
Alderwoman Saavedra?
So if we're talking about ad hoc committees, and there's a particular ad hoc committee that the council wants to form, I don't think anything that currently exists in the ordinance prevents us from doing that. But the way this ordinance reads is confusing because you're striking through, there shall be 3 subject matter committees of the common council, and the sentence then picks up with legislative cognizance and jurisdiction. So you have a sentence kind of midway with no subject matter, actually. So that's kind of curious to me. And then down at the bottom, the majority party, minority party, and president pro tem shall not be chair. Is leadership suggesting that they, beyond being the leaders of the council, should also be recognized as chair people of subject matter committees? Because I disagree with that premise. I think you need to share the leadership positions. And I'd hate to think that anybody in a leadership position wants to also covet chairmanships. So that's a little problematic for me. So maybe John could address those 2 things before I ask any other questions?
Alderman McNamara?
I would agree that it's a good idea to spread leadership responsibilities out, and I don't think it's the intent for council president or majority leader or minority leader or assistant minority leader to occupy chairmanships necessarily. Again, it's a tool to give the council more flexibility in how it organizes the committees.
So if I may just, and this will be my last,
One more question,
pass it around the room.
and we'll move on.
So without a concrete example of saying something maybe the majority party would like to have happen, that because of this ordinance can't happen, even though I made the motion to refer it with a neutral recommendation, I'm probably going to vote against it because I'm not understanding the necessity of it. Like, so Alderman McNamara, if you came here tonight and said, this is something I wanted the council to establish, but this ordinance is prohibiting us from doing it, then I would understand your request for a change. But to say somewhere off into the future, we might have an idea, and this may or may not hinder us, is not solid for me. So it's not solid for me without really a concrete example of how you want to use it. So actually, I'm going to vote against it.
Okay, well, we can put it on the full floor, but I would just say that, my concern is we're a system of checks and balances. We have an executive branch, a legislative branch, and this is just a tool to give the council flexibility in organizing the committees the way it wants.
Apologies, real quick, point of order, as the chairman, am I allowed to expound on these subjects? Sorry, so
Yes.
I'll gladly go last.
I would like to hear what you have to say on this first. Yeah.
Sorry, so this is a minor technical change that allows us to potentially create a body that would hear some very valid concerns that have been prevalent in many of our meetings. It doesn't bind us to anything. It simply allows us to create what in my mind would most likely be a temporary and or ad hoc committee to solve some very tangible problems if they are brought to our attention. However, it expands the options available. It doesn't bind us to anything, and given the prevalence of the unhoused issues that have come up at several meetings, this allows a body to hear those problems and possibly act on solutions that have been presented. So I would just say it doesn't necessarily restrict us in any sort of way and just allows further discussion of these matters which have been brought to our attention. Thank you. Simpson.
So there are actually two changes on this proposed ordinance or resolution, what have you. The first one, I do have to agree with Alderwoman Saavedra that the first one just creates an incomplete sentence. I would really encourage, if this body wants to expand the toolkit that the council has in terms of creating committees, that we have more elaborate language that defines exactly what those powers are. And as for this second change, I'm going to read this into the public record. As of now, the language currently exists is, the majority party leader, minority party leader, and president pro tempore shall not be the chair or act as the temporary chair of any subject matter committee or subcommittee. Now, if it's not the intention of the leadership or the sponsors of this resolution to concentrate power of the council to then have the leadership also act as chair, why is there an action in the first place to remove this?
Any further discussion?
Well, I would, thank you, Alderman. I think this, the intent of this is, in certain committees, the committee, ad hoc committee you referenced, or Alderwoman Saavedra referenced, that there can be flexibility in who chairs such a committee. However, given the sufficient doubts that the members have, I move to table this.
Second.
Motion to table seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion My sincere apologies to Alderman Russell. Anyways, we had a motion to table, which was seconded and was carried. Thank you. All right, the third item on the agenda is 36364, amendment to 241 Code of Ordinances regarding subject, oh wait, was that this one? That was this one. Apologies. Sorry, we are on to the fourth item. Item number 36365, amendment to Chapter 2, Section 2338, Code of Ordinances regarding compensation of elected and appointed officials. May I have a motion?
I move with a neutral recommendation to refer back to the council.
Alderwoman Saavedra with a neutral recommendation, seconded by Alderman Gibson. Any discussion?
Of course.
Alderwoman Saavedra?
Didn't you guys miss me in February? So unfortunately, none of the makers of this resolution are here tonight to answer any specific questions. It looks to me like it's just Section 6 that we're changing. And if I get this right, Attorney Pekorski, you could tell me that this is just to tie in other elected positions, treasurer, common council, clerk of committees is appointed, that if there is no, and correct me if I'm getting this right, if compensation committee doesn't move to increase wages, then these elected and appointed positions would get whatever 1186 got?
That is correct.
And that, instead of biannual, or I always get those wrong, instead of just once every 2 years, this would be an annual increase though, right?
That's correct.
Right, so I mean, I think.
Well, annual in the sense that if there's not, so if in 1 year there's a compensation committee and it recommends an increase, then they would get that increase and not the 1186 increase.
Correct.
But in the next year, if there is no compensation committee, or if the compensation committee does not recommend a salary adjustment, then they would get the 1186 increase.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, so just to follow up, how it used to be was a compensation committee was put together once every 2 years. So, and then whatever was recommended was, you were held to that for 2 years. If I understand this resolution as it applies to all elected and our appointed person here, clerk of committees, then if there is no compensation committee recommendation, then these positions can get a raise 2 years in a row through the, if 1186 is scheduled for a raise 2 years in a row. That's for you, Mrs. Pekorski.
Okay, I was just going to ask you. Yes, that's correct.
All right, so I mean, I think.
And that's along with the other positions in that ordinance section as well.
Yes, I just want to make sure that the council understands that, so if the compensation committee makes a recommendation, then we wouldn't get the COLA or whatever it is that 1186 has, but if they don't, then instead of one raise within that 2 year period, you'd get 2 raises, just so people understand, and they might be minimal, and the contract might actually call for a 0, it's whatever their contract calls for, but whereas that is every single year, compensation is every 2 years, the compensation, so I just think people ought to understand that.
Thank you, Alderwoman Saavedra. Alderman McNamara?
So if I just clarify, and the council can chime in, that as I would understand it, the compensation committee can establish a base salary outside of, for these designated positions, elected and so forth, that is a new base salary that is not a part of any collective bargaining agreement. But the ordinance, short of reestablishing a new base salary, these officials will piggyback onto a negotiated, negotiating contract of 1186 employees. So it's two separate methods of changing the pay.
Except you can't have them both happening together.
Correct.
It's one or the other. So if the compensation committee recommends nothing, then the 1186 increase will kick in. But if the compensation committee recommends some type of an increase for those elected positions, then the 1186 increase does not happen.
Right, and the compensation committee used to be the be-all and end-all, and this is,
Right, no, I understand. So it takes politics out of it. So if there's a year that the compensation committee was afraid to offer a raise, then this way tied to 1186, elected officials would get a raise without having other elected officials make that determination. But usually the compensation committee is making an action for the following election cycle. So I guess, Mary, that's kind of my question. So the compensation committee that met in 2023, their recommendation kicks in 2025. Let's say they didn't recommend anything. When would the 1186 increases hit the council? The same time, that next election cycle?
I think for the council, because they're part of that number 6, it says each, so it says each Tuesday following the mayoral election of November 2023. So I think it's each November. So November of 2024, if there was no increase awarded by the compensation committee, they could get the 1186 increase, and November of 2025 and November of 2026.
Okay.
That's the way
So
that
I
read
think
it.
that's another important distinction, that the 1180, tying into the 1186 is not about the next council. It's about the existing council. But if
That
the
is correct.
compensation committee met and recommended an increase, that would be for the next council cycle.
That's correct.
So it's a little
Now-
complicated.
And that's just for that subsection 6. For the registrars, as I indicated previously, that's subsection 7, and that's in January each year.
Right.
And then the mayor's is in subsection 8, which is in, again, November of each year.
So, yes, it's a little complicated. It's different than it was in previous years, but I understand. I just want to make sure everybody else understood exactly how that was working. Thank you.
I have a
Thank you,
question.
Alderwoman Sedager. Alderwoman Barbosa?
Why can't these all just be on the same date? Like, everybody gets a raise on the same day instead of one in 22, one in 23, or one in January, one in November, one in July. Why can't it just be,
Because as Alderwoman, are you asking me? I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. As Alderwoman Saavedra indicated, the intent was that the raise would take effect with the first day of the next term of the position. And because the registrars are 4-year terms and the town clerk, they have, and their term starts in January, that's why you have the distinguishing January and November. All the other ones, like the mayor, it used to be tax collector and town clerk, I know those are changing, but those were always November because that was tied to the municipal elections. The registrar and the town clerk are on a different schedule, that's why. You're welcome.
Thank you, Alderwoman Barbosa. Any further questions or discussion? No? Seeing no further questions or discussion, the motion is to refer with a neutral recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right. Do we have something else here? Are we done? I thought we've got a motion to adjourn. May I have one?
Second.
Seconded?
Second.
Motion to adjourn, moved by Alderwoman Saavedra, seconded by John McNamara. Let's all go home.